she just waved me off. And I was like, I was pissed in the moment. I'm like, God damn it. Like I want to be communicated to. Max had broken his arm and she was flying because she was on the phone with the school and she was on the phone with the place where he was at, the camp he was at. And it was a determination of how do we do this. And she was also calling the ortho to make sure he could get seen. So she texted me like an hour later and said, I'm sorry. I was on the phone with these two people. That's why I flew down the driveway. This is the things that I'm worrying about. I should have been deprioritized. And although I was emotional, I didn't feel loved in the moment. My wife made a great series of decisions and she picked the right things to prioritize. Not me, somebody else.
You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Matthews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
It's 30 minutes away. I'll be there in 10.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Frankie!
Ian, you handsome 50-year-old son of a bitch.
Man, feeling good as ever, man. I feel young. I feel vibrant. I feel rejuvenated. After a week in Italy, drinking red wine, I'm still trying to dry out from that.
You should probably also feel like pulling your microphone closer because your audio just went to crap.
My audio did?
Pull it closer.
Yeah, and then I'm going to have people telling me that there's too much bass and it's too loud.
Perfect. Well, now we're golden. So set us up, big guy.
I don't have anything set up. This is your agenda. Hey, everyone, get excited. This is one of those rare moments where you get blessed with a Frank Cava agenda, itinerary, and motivation. This is exciting for me.
So what we're going to talk about today is the difference between what's critical and what is just informational. I was in an interview with someone a couple of days ago, and she literally used the term, is it 911 or is it 411? And I had never heard that. And I think it's kind of an unpacking of something that's very, very important in business. And it's something that everybody struggles with, right? What is something I elevate up? What is something I don't elevate up? And in the world of the Let Me Speak to a Manager podcast, whenever we talk to Ian, he usually uses great philosophers, people like Plato or, Marcus Aurelius. He talks about things that are more along the lines of like, Harvard Business Review or psychological studies. 911 versus 411 kind of feels more like in my lane, where I get most of my philosophy from bumper stickers like shit happens or horn blows. How about the driver? Those are two favorite bumper stickers that I've always thought of. And I feel like in my life, 911 versus 411 is kind of one of those. It's like, what's the critical stuff? What's the stuff that's more informational purposes only? And what I want to get my arms around is how do you kind of decipher the two of those things?
For aficionados of early 90s hip hop, Public Enemy had a song with the great Flavor Flav, 911's a Joke, which came out in the early 90s, probably like 1990, 91. And shortly after that, you may not know this, Frank, Mary J. Blige released her debut album, and on that was What's the 411? And that was in 1992. So we could be talking about the difference between Mary J. Blige, the soulful Mary J., and the eccentric Flavor Flav.
No doubt.
You didn't see me go in that direction, did you?
Ian, you're full of surprises.
So I feel like your business and the way you've set up your professional life, there are definitely more 911s than what I deal with. I find that most of the time I don't have a lot of 911s that require me urgently. I do get calls from clients that they really need to talk to me a little bit faster, but I feel like I felt like I had more 911s when I was working for Fortune 500 companies than I do in the private world. I feel like very few things really warrant my attention that I have to stop everything I'm doing and jump on it right now. Whereas in bigger organizations, you feel some of that pressure because there's a lot of differing opinions on what's important. You have so many layers and, you have more bureaucracy and you have corporate structure, and you just have, everyone has their own agenda, their own silo of what's important, and they want you to feel like their needs are every bit as important as yours. So I would say in general, the bigger the company, the bigger this struggle is. I also would say the vast majority of people that I work with that go through a program with me struggle to define what's urgent and what's not urgent. And most people don't get as much done as they should, or not as productive as they could be, because they treat too many things as urgent that their manager might think is insignificant.
So I feel as if, unless you've taken one of Ian's training classes, most teams are drowning in noise because nobody's actually taken the time to teach them the difference between an emergency and what's directory assistance or informational purposes only, right? So there's a few things that kind of are applicable here. In your own life, like kids thinks everything's an emergency. I have a 5 and a 7-year-old at the moment. Nothing that they usually deal with is an emergency. When they actually have an emergency, like Max broke his arm for the fucking second time a couple days ago, like that he tried to blow off. Like, no, that actually matters. But so like I feel in a lot of instances we elevate things up because of kind of ego or wanting to be important, or kind of hijacking things that get a currency. But then there's really important things, you kind of downplay them. So that's, I think, just human nature and kind of how we have to kind of where we start.
It's funny that you bring up kids. I have teenagers, and my wife, just before we started, hit record on this, sent me a screenshot that's pretty hilarious. My son, who's in high school, was sent, like, rattled off 15 urgent text messages this morning of something he needed from my wife, from Jenny. And she was at tennis, playing tennis, and not looking at her phone. And the last text is, never mind. And, the first one is like, if you were to read it, you would think there was an actual school shooting going on. He's so desperately getting her to respond. And she sat on it for an hour, and then it was never mind. I figured it out on my own. And I would say often we create some of this, and part of this, I hope she's not listening to this, she'll get pissed at me. Part of this is my wife is
our spouses do not listen to this.
She does not listen to it, but I hope someone doesn't forward it to her and tell her I said it. But the truth is, my wife's a good mom, and she wants to be attentive, and she 100% responds most of the time to stupid text messages like that, where she'll respond right away, or she'll do something, or she wants to be helpful. She wants to do those things. So she kind of creates that monster a little bit, where the expectation is mom is always wired 24/7 and always responds right away. Whereas I don't get those text messages because my kids know that I sit on calls all day and I don't really look at my phone. So they're very used to sending me a text message and getting a response 3 hours later, 4 hours later. So they just know I'm not 911. I guess if you were to look at it, I'm 411 and my wife is 911. I don't respond right away. I don't send help out. I can't leave my office most of the time. I can't come get you. I don't even know how to respond with the school. Like, all the things my wife is good at and quick at, she's 911. I'm not. I'm like, hey, FYI, Dad, like, look at this. When you look at it, you look at it. It's an interesting dynamic when you think about it for family, but I also see that in companies, that managers or employees who are like the first person to respond to every email, or they always pick their phone up, or they always immediately respond to a text message right away. People like that build an expectation that you're my person if I want a response really fast. So and if you do that, everything's always going to be a 911 to you, because you've kind of created that bubble around you.
In the family element, I feel as if you go back maybe 3 generations, right? Like the people who raise our parents, maybe it was because we are socioeconomically in a different position. Our generations have continued to get better in our personal family stories. We've moved from the middle class to the upper middle class, and maybe to the, we're ascending as families. So the reason I think this is important is I think mom guilt is something that comes about now. I don't think in the 50s moms had guilt. Like, I think that's something that's new. But going back to millennia, the mother is the nurturer. She's the one with the milk. She's the one that bore the children. So I feel as if there's part of that is that's part of it. And then there's the balancing act of who's the velvet glove and who's the hammer. And in my life, it was similar, right? Like if you needed something, you always went to my mother. And then if your dad was kind of like, my dad was more of like I don't think I went to my dad for information, but he was kind of the stern one or kind of the steady hand and the one you would kind of go to. And I think that's kind of, that's divided out between men and women and division of labor and kind of biology. But there is something that is, I think, relevant. If everything is treated like a 5-alarm fire, your business, your life, anything, you can't scale and you can't grow. Because if everything's an emergency, nothing's an emergency. So you have to start to look at where are the balancing acts in all of this stuff, right? Like, I'll use just a stupid example, but it's relevant. Like, my house is relatively neat and clean, but I always have a stack of papers. Like, you're coming to my office tomorrow. There's a stack of papers on my desk. There's a stack of papers kind of in my credenza. Those are the things that are not critical. Like, at some point I might need to reference them. They're not like organized enough to be filed away. They're a little bit more relevant than that, but they're not critical things. And you have to kind of learn in your life to kind of deal with what are the things that are allowed to kind of be a mess, unorganized, and what are the things that you need to really, really focus on. And it's a silly example, but like literally I always have a pile of papers that I just haven't quite gotten to yet because they're just in that kind of no man's land of not critical, but not trash. And the reason that that's always there is because there's always things that are more important you have to prioritize. So the hard part about finding the words to this, everybody struggles with it, no matter who you are. Like if you read Jeff Bezos, he makes no important decision after 1 p.m. because he feels like the day's gotten too cluttered and there's too much noise. Everyone in life struggles with what is really critical and important and what is something that could be deprioritized.
So I think also when I see a culture where everyone has anxiety, where they have, you see a lot
anxiety is something that didn't come up in the agenda or what we talked about, but it's 100%. I see where you're going here.
Yeah, you see a lot of Outlook FOMO. You see a lot of notification FOMO.
Yep.
Frank has a couple of managers like this that feel like they always have to be tethered. And what if Frank calls me? And what if Frank texts me? And it's like, what were you doing? I was at a baseball game watching my son, like in the middle of an at-bat, you'd pick up just because Frank called. He's not the frickin' Messiah. Like, what are you doing? Send him to voicemail and say, I'm at a ball game. Like, he doesn't pick up when you call him during bath time. At some point, you got to have some boundaries. But when I see some of the FOMO in organizations, and like in this situation, the two of you had a good conversation, and Frank was like, "No, don't pick up. Like, if you're in the middle of something, just send it back." Sometimes you just got to reset expectations a little bit and try to figure it out. But a couple of just standard points. Micromanagers create other micromanagers. Just like parenting, the way you're raised, you kind of become a similar parent or at least pick up some techs. But also firefighters create more firefighters. And if you think about a firefighter, ultimately, if there were no fires, firefighters would quit making money. And so firefighters are always looking for fires, if not creating the fires themselves, because if I don't have any fires to put out, why are they paying me? And so people with insecurities are usually the ones that struggle the most with feeling like everything's a fire. And some of that is they're creating the fires so that people will see value in them, or at least perceived value. And
there's a currency associated with it.
There's a currency of like, look at me, look how good I am at putting fires out. And it's like, why do you have so many fires? Like, I don't know. I have less respect for firefighters than people that seem calm on top of it. I'll get to that when I get to it. people that are always scrambling from one fire to another, they strike me as reckless, dangerous, and not productive.
So this is hysterical. So when my wife was a kid, her sister was looked at as being incredibly smart, and they looked at her as someone who was less smart. And she went to school in about first grade. Their parents went to a parent teacher conference, and the teacher said something to the effect of, "You understand Elizabeth is gifted, right?" And they're like, "Elizabeth is gifted?" She doesn't say anything. Stephanie's the sister's always asking questions, is always kind of front of mind. And Elizabeth kind of just hangs back. And then the teacher said, "Have you ever considered it's because Elizabeth has all the answers and doesn't need to ask questions?" And that is, there's a dichotomy, right? You kind of like, some people who are really, really, really smart can kind of settle things down, and other people kind of escalate things up. And the reason I think that's worth bringing up here is sometimes you celebrate the questions because you see its engagement, but you don't know to ask the question. You don't go to, what should really the baseline of this be? You use in your management training the superhero effect, right? People want to put their cape on and go and solve. So there is something that's known as the communication tax. And there's a problem with it because everybody will kind of come in and ask you, "You got a minute, you got a minute, you got a minute." And that's a big time type of interruption. The reality is 90% of what lands in our inboxes or lands on our desks is more informational than it is important and critical. So what you have to do in order to work your way through this, you have to build a clear clinical process for figuring out what demands your time and what demands the time of the people who come and interrupt you. And it really matters to kind of understand that, because if you don't put the boundaries up, no one else will do those for you.
It's interesting, Frank. One of the builders that I work with in their model homes, the way they've designed the offices for the sales reps, they are glass walls, glass doors, glass walls. And so when they're on camera with me on a group training class, I can see everything going on in the model, which is kind of interesting for me. You see, when I can see before the sales rep does that someone's walked in, that there might be a client coming in. But really interesting piece for me is how many people just come, even though they're on a call and you can see that they're engaged and their door's closed. How many people either just walk into their office or knock on the door, even though they are clearly on a call. And I always had fun with those sales reps asking, like, was that a "you're about to lose a sale" interruption? No, they never are. All right, well, have you created some boundaries? Like, because clearly they don't see your door being closed as "do not interrupt." Do you need to explain to people what you should be interrupted for? And sometimes, a lot of times, they're getting interrupted by the receptionist who works at the front door. And it's like, this is as simple as telling the receptionist, if it's a customer I've already written a sale for and they just happen to be visiting the community and want to chat with me, I'm on with the customer. If it is the construction manager asking me a general question about expectations I set, I'm on with a customer. If it is brand new prospect who just walked in the door, who's never met me before, I'm not on with a customer. Come get me immediately. Like, tell people what the moat is around your castle, because people can't see it. Build a moat, build a wider moat, and create rules of what is an allowable interruption when my door is closed and what is clearly not. Because a lot of times, and I'm not trying to say that I'm like so important that they shouldn't be interrupted for me. The bigger issue is more when they're trying to like lock in on prospecting and trying to just make, because when you're prospecting, you don't do one prospect call an hour. The best way to prospect is to get in a zone and prospect for like 2 hours, call back all my customers, touch base with my, people that have been through here, try to get them back for a second meeting. You want to get in a zone, right? You want to get into deep work where your mind is clicking and cranking it. You don't want to be interrupted for that shit. But I find that when people get interrupted, it's 9 times out of 10, Frank, when I ask those sales reps, have you made it clear what's okay to interrupt you on? I don't know. Can I do that? Yeah. You don't have to be an executive to do that. your time is best served getting sales and making revenue for the company. It's not best served being everyone's 911. Like the majority of things that they explain to me are, in your parlance, 411s.
So, do you remember there was a blog
I wonder how
post?
many people listening to this, by the way, because there are some young folks that even know what the hell a 411 is. So maybe it's important. Back in the day when there were like rotary dials, when Frank and I were coming up, you called 411 and a lady would answer, like a random operator who worked for one of the bells, the baby bell companies, and she would say 411, and you'd say, "Do you have a number for Frank Cava in Coral Springs, Florida? Hold second." And that was 411. You called to get a phone number. That's what I used 411 for. I don't remember if there was any other information you could get from 411. Whereas in obviously 911 is still around. You call 911 if your house is on fire or someone's been murdered or something bad has happened. Someone had a heart attack.
411 was Google before Google, is essentially what it was.
But a much more limited version. I think you could only get an address or like a phone number. It's about all you could get.
Right.
Yeah.
You remember there was a blog post that went around 10, 20 years ago. It was called The Makers versus the Manager. You remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So a maker is someone who makes things, and a manager is someone who manages things, quite simply, right? Managers kind of show up to work, use their inbox, and kind of just fight fires all day is the methodology. But makers are people who have a rotary phone and not an iPhone, who leave their phone in the house and go to the workshop and go work. And they build and they whittle and they do different things, right? But they're makers. They're people who literally make things. But the reason and kind of the distillation is different between these two things is a maker doesn't have time for interruptions, because when you're doing your craft, you're sewing something, you're building something, you're literally focused with blinders on getting that task done. And then you come up for a break, you get lunch, you get a glass of iced tea, maybe you look at your phone. But nowadays what it is that there's so many interruptions because of the fact that we're desensitized with social media. What you were saying about alerts and kind of FOMO, there's an entire industry around FOMO. Like, I have a phone, I have a watch, I have a computer. Everything that I have in my life that's attached to me buzzes or goes off. It's like it's impossible to find free time anymore, because that's kind of the way that we get eyeballs, and eyeballs then lead to marketing dollars. And that's how society has worked. So finding the ability to have boredom, finding an ability to step back and to kind of look at things from a different lens. Elon Musk has come out and called Warren Buffett boring. But Warren Buffett is one of the most successful people in the history in the world from a financial standpoint, because he made his life boring, because he pulled away and made sure that those old school sensibilities never got eroded. So he had time to really focus.
Frankie, have you ever heard of a Ulysses pact? A Ulysses pact? So Ulysses from the Odyssey.
Ulysses S. Grant. Or no,
Ulysses from the Odyssey. Not S. Grant, who also incredible person, but no, from the book that we don't like, the Odyssey.
But you do know that's coming out as a movie, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm told it's going to be amazing. Yeah. I remember
Ulysses pact. So Ulysses pact, in the Odyssey, there are sirens. Sirens are these beautiful women who sing out in the ocean, and they are so beautiful and they sing so much they put you into a trance and you quit steering your ship and you die, crash into the rocks. So Ulysses knew that he was going to go by them, and knew that he had to go by them to survive, to get back home. And so what he did was he had all of his men tie him to the mast so that he wouldn't lose his mind and steer them in the wrong direction. And so when they went by, he didn't go diving off of the boat like the rest of his folks that didn't tie themselves down. That's a Ulysses pact. He knew he wasn't strong enough. He knew he wasn't strong enough to resist the siren's call. And so he tied himself to the mast. So he knew when that moment came, he couldn't even physically jump in the water and go into the rocks if he wanted. So a Ulysses pact for someone in a business would be, I'm going to go put my phone down in my car for an hour, or I am going to literally take my laptop and go put it somewhere else when I'm making my prospect calls. So I don't even have the siren song to bother me. And I think for some of that FOMO, there's a lot of ways to do this. So as you were talking about, all these devices have been engineered. At some point, I've had one of those Whoop devices, which tracks my movement. I had an Apple Watch at one point. I've had one of those Aura rings. I have since gotten rid of all of them because I found that I was dicking around, looking at them all the time, messing with them all the time, checking the app that was tied to them all the time. I have enough trouble not looking at my iPhone, and I kind of need it for so much of my businesses that I have to have an iPhone. But I have Ulysses Pact is I'm going to be out of earsight. I don't need to add more sirens singing at me that distract me, that get me to jump into the ocean and die. I've gotten rid of most things that have notifications that interrupt me, that bother me. I don't have interruptions on my notifications on my Outlook. I don't have it in Slack. I don't. I know you don't use Slack, but I use it for Keep, our tech company. I have no notifications on. That kind of annoys David, my partner that runs the company, because he looks at them quite a bit. But if he really needs me, he knows call me or text me. I kind of check my Slack maybe once every couple of days, every day maybe. I'll go in and look at it, but I don't need a little bing, bing every time someone posts in there, because 99 out of 100 are not that important to me. So my Ulysses Pact with Slack is just notifications are always off, and I don't even check it until I want to, when I want to go in and look at it.
So I think there's two things I want to explain. First is you look at your hourly rate. So this can be nebulous, but when I started my business, I wasn't making any money, but I used to have a job. And when I had that job, I made a good hourly wage. So what I did in the beginning is mowing the lawn, folding the laundry, cleaning the house, cooking the groceries, shopping for the groceries. I didn't want to do those tasks because those were lower tasks by the hour than I was making in my old job. And although I didn't have revenue coming in, that was one of the guides that I used. So what I'll do in a lot of instances is, like, I'll have a manager who's doing something like sweeping out a house or cleaning something. Like, okay, if someone's about to show up and this is last minute, we all kind of can put our ego to the side and do those types of tasks. But that can't be the guiding principle of your day, because your hourly rate is 2 to 3 times the cost of someone who's going to load a dumpster or sweep a house. So those are just things. Like, if it's an emergency and there is a 911, someone's showing up, okay, suspend that hourly rate. But at the same time, that can't be the guiding principle of your day or your week. So that's just a really simple way to look at it. But if you define the lines of 911 versus 411, there's something called the 911 protocol, right? And what the 911 protocol is, first you have to define what is 911. It's something that's immediate or an existential threat. If there is one of those types of situations, the rule is you elevate and you interrupt. Here are a couple of examples. In real estate, a pipe burst, that's an emergency. Stop that immediately, right? If there's like a tech situation, if your server crashes, like if you ever saw the movie The Social Network, the servers crash, like servers don't crash. That's an emergency in the world of tech. The other day I was on the phone with somebody.
Can I stop for 1 second real quick though?
Yep.
Because I think this is important. Whenever I talk about the Eisenhower matrix, which is it urgent and is it important?
Yep.
A pipe bursting in Frank's business is obviously important. But is it important for Frank? If someone is capable of fixing the pipe without getting Frank involved,
100%.
Why would you involve Frank? Go fix the frickin' pipe. Give him an update after. Hey, we had some water damage. I had to spend a little extra on this job. It's going to come up in the ops meeting, but I fixed the pipe. If you have no one capable of fixing the pipe and the pipe is burst, get Frank on the phone. Like, call him right away, because it's about to turn into a $50,000 problem, and it could be $1,000 if no one knows how to solve it. Where I see the problem comes in a lot is I can fix it, but I need to tell someone. I need to tell Frank there's a pipe burst, instead of just go fix the freaking pipe. Let Frank know what I did. handle it. Don't let him know there's a huge problem. By the way, I'm putting my cape on. I'm about to fly over and save the damsel in distress. No, just go fix the freaking pipe, right? It has to be contextual. Yes, that's a problem. Is it a problem that I have to let someone know about, or is it a problem that I can't just fix myself?
Stated a different way, a pipe bursting is an emergency, but it's an emergency for who? It is not an emergency for me. It's an emergency for somebody else because I have well-defined lines. But if it's not a pipe burst and that doesn't fall directly in a department, that's when it gets gray and kind of hairy, right? Like, okay, should I handle it? Should someone else handle it? Is that something I need to deal with? So I was on the phone last Thursday and Ellie just went flying down the driveway like a bat out of hell. And I was talking to somebody, I'm like, man, I just feel like a sperm donor some days. Like, that's all I am around here. I'm a wallet and a sperm donor. She just waved me off. And I was like, I was pissed in the moment. I'm like, God damn it. Like, I want to be communicated to. Max had broken his arm and she was flying because she was on the phone with the school and she was on the phone with the place where he was at, the camp he was at. And it was a determination of how do we do this. And she was also calling the ortho to make sure he could get seen. So she texted me like an hour later and said, I'm sorry. I was on the phone with these two people. That's why I flew down the driveway. This is the things that I'm worrying about. I should have been deprioritized. And although I was emotional, I didn't feel loved in the moment. My wife made a great series of decisions and she picked the right things to prioritize. Not me, somebody else. And that's what that looks like. In retrospect, I'm like, of course you should have made those decisions. I was a little bit butthurt that I didn't get the love and the time that I wanted, but my wife made the right series of decisions. So sometimes it doesn't feel great in the moment, but when you go back and audit the situation, I feel like I picked the right partner. She made the right series of choices.
Here's where it's going to sound like we're speaking out of both sides of our mouth.
Correct.
I find that the majority of getting this wrong is turning a 411 into a 911.
Yep.
I run to Frank and say the pipe burst when I have 4 maintenance guys who are all within 6 blocks of that area that could go out and fix the pipe. But you can also turn a 911 into a 411. You can de-escalate something that needs a manager's attention. I'll give an example of this. One of Frank's employees got an unsolicited email and responded back in a way that was very unfitting of someone working for an organization, especially someone with an email address that is at Kava Companies. Frank's name is in that. It went to the wrong people and they took exception to it. It was a very insulting. It wasn't something Frank would ever want any of his employees to put in an email with his dad's name in it. And in that area, it went to one of Frank's managers. Now, they could have handled it. They could have reached out to the person. I'm really sorry that our employee handled it in that regard. And they could have taken what really was a 911 and turned it to a 411. We'll just handle this under there. But in this one, Frank talked about reputation as being one of them. That would have not been the right move. It was a problem big enough, befitting of the owner, and whether you think it's small or not, I'm not going to tell you what was in the email. It was wholly inappropriate. That deserved Frank's attention. That didn't need to get de-escalated and Frank didn't find out about it, which I do find a lot of people do that too. We don't want to bother the boss or the boss. And usually when you have an organization where problems become much bigger and people don't want to share with the boss that we got a problem that we're working on, it's usually a boss that is does a poor job of responding to failures. They point fingers. They want to know what the hell is going on. How did this happen? And so people try to hide things from the boss. Now, in the situation I'm explaining from Frank, someone did explain, his COO did bring it to Frank right away and said, we got to talk about this. This is an issue. And it is something that warranted his attention. But that could have easily been swept under the rug. It was an email in response to a solicitation, right? But this person knows Frank well enough and says, you know what, I think this is a big enough deal. I'm going to bring it to you. because Frank's not the kind of guy that would blame her for that. He needed to see it. He needed to address it. Frank personally responded to the email, got involved himself. But you can see on either side, you can turn a 911 into a 411 inappropriately, and you can also turn the 411 into a 911 inappropriately.
So the definition of a 411 is something that's vital information, but it isn't urgent. Using your Eisenhower box, it's important, but it's not critical, right? So that's the kind of thing that you can log and batch, or you can wait till later. So I'll give you two really quick examples. We have a construction meeting once a week. I have a rental meeting once a week. I get a bunch of emails. If it's urgent, I tell them to follow that email up with a text message, say, I need you to get back to me within 2 hours. And that's a reasonable amount of time. It usually comes down to we have a situation, or we have to say yes or no on a rent with an expiration date. Perfect. Otherwise, I'll get an email and says this can wait till Monday. And that's because it was trained into people. And we have built those types of things. I had somebody who's getting a little stressed out. We have a lot going on in the business at the moment. We've got like 50 ADUs under construction. And someone's like, I need an answer on this. I said, okay. Can it wait 3 more hours until we're meeting? Well, sure. Perfect. Put it on the agenda. Let's get through that. So that's the easy stuff as a leader and as an owner. But where you can screw this up, the email situation that Ian was talking about, it came to the COO, but the reason the COO saw it, it got emailed directly to me, and she's in my email. And she knew to point it out to me because she thought it was something that was sensitive. I was in the car. She read it to me. I said, can you respond as you and say this will elevate up to me, and we will respond to it. And we did. And literally somebody in our organization used a company email and just said something despicable. And Carla replied to it. And then when I was home, 3 or 4 hours went by, I was sitting at my desk, I answered it. And then we actually did some follow-up, and we followed up a second time. But these are the types of the gray areas, and you have to pick and choose your battles. To me, that's reputational, and it matters. And it was something that I would be completely and totally not cool with had I known or not known about it. And these are things that they're gray areas. You get to pick and choose. In my business, I choose. That's important to me. Something really weird happened. This whole thing happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was out to lunch with a banker on Friday, sitting down having lunch, and someone came over to me and goes, hey, how are you? And introduced himself. He was on that email thread. And he said, who's this? And I said, this is one of our bankers. You can be honest in front of him. He goes, thank you. I was on that email thread where that thing was said. He goes, the way that you handled that was incredible. I just want to thank you for that. And very, very, very cool. So the reason I think it makes sense to have that conversation around that is people on our staff know what is and what is not important. They know what to bring me into, and it's not perfect. Sometimes I wish I knew, sometimes I wish I didn't, but there's 80% of the time we get it right. And then it made its way to me because it was something I needed to put my hands on. And then full circle, someone came up to me and said, they recognized we turned a negative into an incredible positive, but had I been out of the loop, that might not have happened.
I think you also want to have a protocol with something like this. You want to have a protocol with the people who work for you and the people that you work for, in that what are the different medium that you communicate in, and what do those mean? So for me, if you work with me or for me, an email is not urgent. If I'm sending you an email, it's an FYI, next 48 hours, read it, get to it. I am almost never going to send you an email that is blinking red light saying you've got to go. One level above that is a text. If I text you, it means I'd like to at least get a phone call in the next couple hours. I understand you're busy. You don't need to respond immediately to every text, but if I'm texting you, it's important enough that I would like you to look at it and hopefully get back to me. If I send it this morning, get back to me this morning. If I send it in the afternoon, get back to me by end of day. That's kind of a next level. If I call you, this is just me. Again, this is preference. There are people different than me. If I call you, I'm busy. I don't have a lot of time to call a lot of people. I'm doing what I'm doing right now all day. I'm on camera all day talking to people. So if I call you, I rarely call to just shoot the shit. it's pretty damn important. I either expect you pick it up or you call me back as soon as you get off the phone that you're on with right away. So I try to explain that protocol to people as best I can, but I also don't cry wolf. I don't call you 7 times a day. If I call you that frequently, you'll get numb to it just like a different email and you're not going to respond as quickly. So I try not to cry wolf. I try to save my phone calls for times where I really need your attention. And I want to explain that to people as much as I can so they don't panic every time they get an email, or they don't have FOMO where they're always checking their Outlook of what if Ian emailed me? What if he text? No, you know what? If I did those things, it's okay. You don't have to get back right away. And until we get a comfort level, I will say that. I will lead with not urgent. Don't respond right away. Just something I want you chewing on for our next conversation. But I think it's really important that you set that protocol with people. And where I find a lot of people get this wrong is when a new manager comes in who has a different style. People
New
learn
employee, new manager, both of those.
Yeah, people learn information in different ways. People are either readers or they are listeners and talkers. And so a listener is going to call you a lot, and they don't expect you to pick up a lot. They don't expect you to return every call so fast because they're always calling.
Yep.
If you're following a listener who makes lots of phone calls, you might get frustrated with the team that they don't always pick your calls up if you're a reader that doesn't like to call. If like calling is kind of your fire protocol and you're following someone who called all the time, you're going to get frustrated. So it's important that you explain to your new team, hey, here's how I'm different than the last person. And I really think that setting the tone for the urgency of each of those different media where you are talking about text, email, Slack, phone call, what do each of those mean? I think that's incredibly important to set that with different people so they know they can go through. So if you're looking at it, like Frank said, does it risk reputation? Does it risk revenue? And then next, is it something I can fix myself, or I know a better resource and I can go handle this myself? If the answer is still no, does it need to be fixed in the next 24 hours? If that answer is still no, send an email, update them in Slack, 411. If it's yes to any of those things, that you do need the boss or you do need someone else, and it does need to be done in 24 hours, don't treat it like a 411. Treat it with the urgency that it expects. Very simple decision tree kind of stuff.
So I believe this all comes down to 4 basic actions, and I'm going to go from least important to most important, kind of go like this. First, self-resolve. So I have something that I either call the 2 weekend rule or the 2 sleeps rule. And we've talked about it here before, but in 2 weekends, if something is really, really, really emotional, I like to have those conversations on like a Thursday or Friday. A weekend goes by and some of the emotion is gone. And then a little bit more time goes by that next week, a second weekend comes by, and then you can really get at the heart of the matter without it really being emotional in any way. But that's kind of just a space and time thing. But there's other things that I'm not going to look at that. Most likely it will resolve itself, and almost always it does. The next one is the parking lot. And the parking lot is kind of like a weekly sync. You either do it once a week at meetings, or you kind of let it sit there for a little while. And sometimes it resolves and sometimes it doesn't resolve. And you kind of see, okay, what's going to happen with this? And if it doesn't resolve, I'll get involved in it or I'll follow up on it. The third one is the elevate but wait. That's the today bucket, or the stuff that is kind of between 411 and 911. Like Ian said, maybe that requires a text message. Maybe that requires a second follow-up. Someone pings you a second time, those types of things. And then the elevate and interrupt is the really, really important stuff. So I have not been an employee for decades. I have been a boss for a very long time. So I can't really talk about or empathize with the employee's perspective of it because it's just not where I'm at in my life. But I can empathize greatly with the owner or the boss or the person who's the ultimate decision maker. And what I can tell you with great certainty is that with all 4 of those buckets, you need to calibrate and talk about it. You have my permission to handle this. Say it up front. Let me know what you decide. That's you deprioritizing something and giving someone autonomy to handle it. If it comes up and it's maybe not as important as you think, but you ask them, say, can I ask you a series of questions? And the person will say, sure. Do you feel comfortable? Do you have the resources? Do you know how to make a good decision here? Do you feel like you have everything you need to do that? Yes, I do. Do you feel comfortable making a decision that's similar to that? Yes, I do. Okay, you have my permission to do that, and then you can parking lot it and bring it up at the weekly meeting. If you get something that someone thinks is an emergency, the worst thing you can do is say, that's stupid. Why the hell did you bring that to me? That's not an emergency. Okay, it's an emergency. Let's talk about it. Cool. If it's emotional, you wait. If it isn't emotional, you ask these questions. I understand that you think this is an emergency. Why do you feel as if this is an emergency? And they'll give you answers as to why. I will let you know that I agree with you on 3 out of 7 points. But if it's these 4, you have my permission. I trust you. You make great decisions. Handle it without me. And you have to constantly calibrate this stuff. Sometimes it won't make its way back to you and you feel like it was an emergency. Hey, if that one comes up again, can you please bring it to me? I would really like to be involved. And they'll say, of course. And then, so it's a constant calibration. And now I've had people in senior management roles around me for years, and I've got one that's been with me for about a year. The people who've been with me for 6 or 7 years understand what is the calibration and what is the emergency, but the people who've been here less time don't. And you have to understand those things as you kind of make your decisions and go through.
Frank's 2 sleep rule, I have a similar rule, which is the 2 fireball rule. You can almost always talk me into taking 1 fireball shot of cinnamon whiskey. I don't really like it particularly. I'm not a big cinnamon sugary whiskey kind of a guy. You can almost always convince me to do 1 of those, but I do draw the line on a second. I am not doing a second fireball shot unless I fully intend for the night to go off the rails. Now, if my intention when I showed up at the bar or the tailgate was for my day to go off the rails, I will happily do the second, third, maybe the 14th fireball shot. But if it's just a chill night, 1 fireball is all you're going to get from me. Way better rule than your 2 sleep rule, I'm going to tell you that. I do have something to say on people who schedule appointments. This one's kind of important to me. I think it's bullshit when at 8:30 in the morning, someone schedules an urgent 2 p.m. meeting with like 4 people and it's really not urgent. And I would say that 90% of the time it's not. If you are going to send out an Outlook calendar invite, it had better meet the criteria we said about a 911 if you are plopping something onto someone's calendar same day, or I would even go as far as next day. I think if you're going to send out an Outlook appointment reminder, it should never be within 48 hours unless it involves something Frank said earlier. Someone's life, revenue, or reputation. Immediately in danger. If not, 3 days out, 4 days out, maybe even next week, give them time to think about the outline. I find this happen, Frank, all the time in big companies. I get people who complain to me that, oh, here we go. So-and-so just sent a new calendar invite that I got to be at 1 o'clock. And here it is at 11 a.m. or tomorrow at 8 in the morning. Now I got to move a bunch of stuff around. And I ask, like, what was that meeting about? Was it important? No, it wasn't urgent. We're just chewing on something. So I feel like when you set meetings with people who also have busy schedules, it's a bullshit thing to do to send someone an Outlook invite for a calendar appointment same day or next day, unless that shit is like raging fire kind of stuff.
My wife has got 2 advanced degrees in communication. So in every way humanly possible, she's a better communicator than I am. She can communicate in multiple languages. She is. But the one thing she does, it drives me nuts, is she'll communicate something to me that she's never taken a sales class. And a sales class will teach you ask for acceptance. So what you do if there's a meeting that gets set up in the same week in my life, it usually is because we're all together and we say, can we get back together in 24 hours because we need to make a decision. But everybody on board is on board with that before you set it. Otherwise, you're dictating your emergency on other people. And that's how you can do those things, right? It's like, hey, are we all in agreement that we should get back together? Or someone in the meeting might say, hey, this is fairly critical. In order to do this properly, is it okay if we meet in a day or two? Like, that's how that stuff kind of comes up, and everybody's on board and gives the verbal acceptance up front. That isn't forcing stress on other people. But if you just set up the meeting and it just comes out, like, that doesn't happen around here because we just don't tolerate it. But I can remember back in the old days, like, I already have something planned for them. Do I have to prioritize this now? It's haphazard. And most of that stuff can go into your weekly or your quarterly or whatever, your next scheduled check-in, and it doesn't have to be an emergency.
So Frank has you have a Monday sales meeting, sales and operation. They talk about leads.
Yep.
They'll get into closings. They get into other things, and it's a bigger group. I also think in organizations where there's lots of these fire meetings that get set up and everyone's got to talk right now, I always dive into what's your regular meeting protocol.
Exactly.
What are those agendas? Like, do you have something where expectations are so big? I know what people that go to Frank's Monday sales meeting know what they need to be prepared for. If they're not prepared, Frank's going to ask a bunch of questions. They're going to look silly in front of people. You got to be ready. You got to be prepared. You have to have your information structured in a certain way that makes sense so that everyone can make decisions off of that meeting. When you have a good regular meeting protocol, what happens is the people who know they have that meeting with you, and that could be weekly, that could be bi-weekly, it could be monthly, it could be daily, depending on whatever the topic is. What happens is when they feel the urge to reach out to you about something, they pause and they make a mental note, I'll get it in the meeting. I find that 50-60% of the reasons someone might call you with a 911, if you have a regular 411 meeting where people are updating each other, they're not going to hit you with as many FYIs. They're not going to. I see it, Frank, all the time. The way I do consulting with one-on-one, we have a meeting protocol. Either some executives I meet with weekly, some bi-weekly, some monthly. And I find that more often than not, when we get on the call, they say, here's the first thing I'd like to talk about. When did this happen? Last Tuesday, but I made a note of it. I knew I'd be talking to you. And what they're telling me is something happened. It's bothering me. I want to try to solve it. I want to try to fix it. But we weren't going to lose life, reputation, or revenue, right? Like, I knew that I was going to get you at some point. The fact that they have a regular meeting with me means that they didn't reach out to me when it happened last Tuesday. Now, if they didn't have a regular meeting, they might have sent me an email. Can we talk? Can we get together? It wouldn't have been urgent. It would have been 48 hours out. But having that regular meeting schedule probably saves Frank a lot of these 911 calls because they know they have a catch-all meeting that they can go. And to me, that's one of the biggest values of having a standing meeting with the right people is they get to voice whatever's coming up in the in-between period of meetings as things come up before they reach out and text or email or Slack or call. They say, you know what? Let's put that on the agenda for the next meeting.
All right, so I'll close with saying this. This is never perfect. It always is a moving target, and it comes down to expectation sets, and it comes down to people that you work with, and making sure that everybody kind of feels the same type of thing. And everybody changes day over day. So what was once an emergency may not be an emergency. What wasn't an emergency may become one, and it comes down to feel in a lot of instances. But I'm going to pivot it and say this. If you see shifts in business, right? We have seen a major shift in our business. What we used to generate from a lead perspective used to be 3 or 4 times more than we currently get now, 2 or 3 years ago. But we actually get similar results because we really have changed the frequency with which we meet. Now, it wasn't a haphazard decision. We sat down, we thought about it, we talked about it, and we put more frequent meetings in place because it requires more constant calibration. So as a leader, you have to look at, like, has there been a fundamental change in my business? And does that require me to put in a new rhythm or series of follow-ups to make sure things happen? And I've talked about it here before, but we went from a 20% close rate to about a 40% close rate. We doubled. on a lack of leads has come down by like 50 to 100%. So we actually get better results now because we have more micro meetings and we have more frequent touches. Our sales meeting used to be an entire Monday. Now our sales meeting is 2 hours on a Monday because we talk every morning for about 20 to 30 minutes. So you have to start to look at, how do I allocate that time? The time is basically the same. It's just spread out because it's more effective. And as a good leader, you should ask people who work with you, are you sure of what's the difference between a 411 and a 911? Is something changing? Would it be more beneficial if we did this with a little bit more frequency? Would we be better if we did it with less frequency? Those are the questions that you can ask as a leader and a manager. And then you have to look at, like, where are the results? How are we doing? And do I agree with what they're saying, or do we need to kind of force something in there in order to kind of drive the results that we want to get to?
And if you're, you're a real estate owner and you want to learn more about the way Frank does his Monday protocol so that he stays on top of one of the most profitable real estate businesses in Virginia, reach out to him. He does do consulting, different types of resulting. He's got a mastermind that he could include you in. If your managers struggle with this and you want to talk to me about Leadership Essentials or one of our management classes, reach out to me. I'm going to be doing some classes in the fall. And Frankie, I will see you tomorrow. I am driving down in a Cadillac Escalade with a handful of big hitting investors that are in our real estate deal. And the 2 fireball rule will be waived tomorrow. There will not be a 2 bottle of red wine rule either. All rules will be waived because we do have a driver bringing us back from Richmond to Nova.
I think I'm going to bring a cooler bag tomorrow just so everybody's on board with this. And then what we'll do is we'll make our first stop, the Sheets. It's around the corner. Everybody can run in, grab what they want, stick it in the cooler, and we are ready to roll.
Do you mind if I bring my beer bong and my beer helmet?
I think that's perfect. I think we should do that as part of our safety protocol at one of our units.
Safety protocols. Make sure Ian's wearing a helmet when he's on job sites, even if it has 2 beers stuck in it with tubes running to his mouth.
So let me tell you what is 411 versus 911. I have spent hours, time, money in my life getting us reservations into places, and Ian doesn't want to wear a shirt or sleeves, or he doesn't want to wear the right fucking shoes. So we were literally in this restaurant in Vegas, and this little man came over to me and he goes, "Sir," because he realized I was the most sober. He goes, "Your friend with the impeccable taste in wine, can you please ask him to put his shirt back on?" And I said, "That's a difficult ask. Can I at least get to the end of this song?" He goes, I think that's a fair trade.
The 2 fireball rule was not in effect that night in Vegas. I can assure you of that.
Although Ian does run a leadership course, I get a call the other day from him, or a text from him, and it literally is like, "Hey, do I have to wear sleeves to this event or a shirt?" I was like, "Listen, dude, you're 50 now. Can you please use the internet and find out what the dress code is? Because I don't want to deal with your stress."
For our loyal listeners here, I wear shirts when I go to nice steakhouses. I just wanted to make Frank a little nervous about what I might show up in.
So this is completely unrelated to anything, but I think it's a wonderful side to close with. Whenever a great song comes on, do you know what Manny does first?
I hope he takes his shirt off.
He rips his shirt off.
Oh, it's amazing. Tarps off, boy. Let's go.
He goes, J.O. As soon as a great song comes on, the first thing the kid does is just rips his shirt off.
Oh, that just makes my heart happy that the youth is not lost. The future is bright. Take that tarp off, Manny.
He does.
That's awesome. Frankie, good hanging out with you. I will see you tomorrow with the boys.
Looking forward to it, buddy.
See you, man.